Welcome to day 28. Become the quantum. So quantum is the age that we're now in. Quantum healing, quantum finance, quantum computers, quantum banking, quantum law. We're going quantum. And in the spiritual world, you hear about the quantum field. And then we hear about quantum mechanics, quantum physics. A lot of quantum, but what is quantum? And when you get the understanding, you can then start using this within your meditations to become the quantum. So quantum is the advancement in technology. As we now know, the advancement in technology means a deeper understanding to the human, because the technology is based on us. So our body is quantum. The way that our cells communicate is quantum. And now that they can track the lights inside the body, the speed of light, they can see how quickly information is sent. So the best way to describe quantum computers, it's all the use of energy. However, everything is so much quicker now. So if you bring awareness to a situation where there could be multiple outcomes, and it could look like you starting off in your house and you need to make it to Brazil. And there's so many different ways and so many different outcomes that could look, that whole route. So you could get the hundreds of the top scientists, 100 of the top engineers, 100 of the top philosophers, 100 of the top of many different fields, and you put them all together, and their job was to work out all the different options that it would take for you to get to Brazil. From the point of when you wake up in the morning and leave your bed, all the different outcomes. As an example, you wake up, you've got your clothes already, you get them on, you get your coffee, you leave the house, and you go straight to the airport. In the same scenario with a slight adjustment, you waking up, you get changed, you go downstairs, you have your coffee, you go out the house, you forgot your spare keys, you go back in, you stumble on a rock, you go to the airport. And next one, you awaken in the morning, this time you have a shower. This time you stop to watch the TV, there's news channels showing some really interesting information. You then have a phone call, and then you go to the airport. So can you see there's loads of different scenarios, and this is just an example. If you then zoom out, the amount of ways and amount of changes that could take place, so many different scenarios. If you had some of those most smartest people and you put them all together and that was their project collectively, it could take them 100 years to find a full spectrum of possibilities. A quantum computer could find all those possibilities in a nanosecond. So it almost works as a time traveler. And people, when we talk about time travel, we think from the human experience. Time travel is the soul. If you change time around its emit, you emit your light. The soul always goes first, awareness. The mind follows. Let's call that the vibration, the sound, the thought. And then the body, that's the physical. And by the time it gets to the body, that speed of light, that speed of sound, it went right by us. So quantum goes super quick. And how do they quantify all things? So with the advancements of science, they're able to now look at microscopic levels. So every part about the human experience, you can zoom right in and keep zooming in and keep zooming in. You go through the different layers, the different tissues, to the point that they now shown that the one human cell, which has everything about you in that cell, if you zoom right in, it's a vibration of light. It's energy. It's space. So if one cell zoomed right in, keep zooming in, is space, a vibration. Imagine all the cells in your body, 50 trillion cells, all zoomed right in. There's a different vibration. And each vibration has different information in there. So we are light beings. And that, when you break it down to that level, each cell is 0.00000001% physical. So if you now look at yourself, your empty space, if we were to zoom right in and capture that light, you are energy. So within the human body advancements, there's technology now called bioresonance. And you can get your own frequency reading. And with the testing, you hold on to 2 poles. The vibrations in your body, remember they're all different lights. All that information is then put onto a computer, like an AI. Again, we call it quantum. And from all the algorithms, from all the data, from all the information that has been collected over the years, all the science, those vibrations now can be converted into words. And if you look into homeopathy, bioresonance, it's almost like a psychic vibrational reading. And it gets it down to your affirmations of how you're feeling at this moment. And my mum is not a believer and maybe not in tune with the latest advancements in technology. She was going through a tough patch. And she discovered some information that really challenged her. And she went to get a bioresonance homeopathy session done, very skeptical. And she come back and she said, oh my God, it gave me all this stuff which was spot on. It told me about my past. It told me about a lot of things. But the one thing was the affirmation it gave me. I wish I never knew. And she realized that there's some truth to it. The energy inside your body vibrations. Quantum, the technology now, they've managed to capture all the energy in the space around you in the external world. And that vibration now can be translated into words, into information. So imagine each light particle. If you look at me on the screen now, what can you see? You see me moving, you see me talking, you see me smiling. But what can you really see? Lights, flashing lights. There's a black screen. And all the lights, they have their pixels, and you see color, you see movement. Imagine zooming into one of those lights, and then the next light, and then the next light. So imagine every scenario. You now look at now, and now, and now, and now. And each now, in this moment, there is a choice. Always a choice. It's your truth, or anything that's not your truth. And now, and now. So one connects to another. Imagine each phase of that you could predict, and you can zoom as far out in time and then go as far back. To connect the dots to your life, we say you have to go back, and one truth leads to another. With that technology now, we can do exactly the same going forward, because time is a concept. So quantum can look forward at different outcomes taking place. And most of the time, we always end up to the same path. We could take the long way, or we could take the right way, our soul. Either way, we make it there. We can give ourselves a bumpy ride, We can give ourselves a soulful experience. Your truth is your truth. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and I'd like to talk you through how I used quantum, how I time traveled, and I'm going to show you how we've overcomplicated time traveling. And when you start using your imagination and connecting your dots, one choice to another choice. And the beauty of this, it doesn't always have to start from now. This is where we go to our destination, the end point in mind. And if you get a meditation and you're shown the truth, you felt it, you experienced it, that defines as real. Your feelings are the truth. So from that truth, we then work backwards. So we connect the dots from the destination back to now, ourself. And that can be overcomplicated when we look at it from the mind. However, when your eyes are closed and you become one with the soul, you will get there in the speed of light. You will see the removal of time to emit. So whenever you now work on time, think of the physical. Whenever we look to emit the light, think of the meditation. So closing your eyes, I'm going to tell you a story. A true story. September 2021. And whilst I'm talking, take your attention inside your body. September 2021. I'd been in Brazil for 5 months. And you could call this the height of the COVID pandemic. We all remember that. An interesting time for all. I got away from all the chaos, all the drama. I was inland, in the middle of nowhere, self-sufficient. 8 mango trees in my garden. And I kept out of all that noise. However, my mum being my mum, they had just moved house after about 43 years. Moved down to a new place in the UK, which I had yet to visit. She wanted me to come back for Christmas. My intention, I want to stay in Brazil. I've got it sweet out here. Beach every day, acai bowl, working from my computer. It was cool. However, I thought I'd come back for 3 weeks to see my mum. And if you remember, during COVID, there was these lockdown procedures and quarantine. And we used to have colour-coordinated countries. Brazil was a red zone country. And UK government had a legal requirement, and I'm mentioning the word legal, that to only come back to the country, you had to do 10 days quarantine in a hotel. You had to spend £2,500 for those 10 days. And you only got 1 hour out of the hotel walking around the car park. And this was all an emergency act for something called COVID. I am a man of my words and a man of the law. In the Bible, it states the law. The law is the land, air, and water. The law is for the common people, common law. Universal law, God's law. We were all destined to have that as a truth. That's inherent within us. When it becomes illegal, an act, a legislation, a registration, legal requires a contract, an agreement. And a lot of the time they use the legal system, the words, as deception to trick you into contracts. However, we won't go there, but just to set the time. So the requirement was under the Emergency Act 2020, COVID, you had to go into quarantine. Because I know my rights and I know the law, and also I disagreed with all the stuff that was going on. I kept away from that. I then said, I will go back to the UK, but I will get back there using my rights. And I'll go straight home. There's no way I will be doing it. And I set that as my goal. To add to it, I said I would record my journey back. I'd use that as information. I use that as inspiration. I use that as content. So on the way back, I had this in my head for a long time, and meditation at that point was getting quite strong. A lot of time on my own, a lot of insights used to come my way. So I'd go into meditations. And in my meditations, I would look at every possible outcome, going back home, my destination, back to my mum and dad's house, no problems, no dramas, do my time there and come back to Brazil. So that's what I took into the meditation. What does this look like? So in the meditation, I'm looking at always, starting from there, what barriers am I going to be met with? What conversations are going to show up? How am I going to be engaged with energy coming my way? What do I say? What is my plan of action? So many different things to take into the meditation, but one dot connects to another. My truth is that I was well within my rights, my lawful rights. My truth, I wanted to go and see my mum and dad for Christmas. My truth is I disagreed with all of what was going on because it was illegal. So that was my truth. So whatever comes in my way, I had to be prepared. I look at each scenario step by step. So in the meditations, you can ask yourself, what resistance am I going to be met with? What conversations are going to rise? What will they say? And the beauty of when you go into these spaces, especially when it is conversations with others, you can predict the outcomes. Usually there might be 5 things. You ask a question, around 5 things that someone can answer. You can predict all 5. If they said this, if they said that. You can then have conversations within your meditations ahead of time. If they say that, what do I now say next? How do I bring it back to my truth? And my truth is the law. So with that truth, I have a powerful question attached to that, which I know if that question cannot be answered, I'm well within my rights, and I stick on that. So my question, what law have I broken? In my head, I could see all the different reasons why I couldn't come in. You're breaking rules. You're going to get arrested. You're going to get fined. They can say all they want. That's all from the mind. But my truth is, what law is that? So every time to dismiss all the different outcomes, because there's multiple ones from the mind, what law is that? What law is that? What law is that? Another part of that trip back was, if you remember, the PCR tests. What a lot of people don't know, in July 2021, the PCR tests failed their emergency testing protocols. They failed. Yet they left them out for another 6 months, and they said, we'll discontinue them December 31st. And you can see that on the CDC website, the FDA website. I managed to find that information quite quickly. So the other thing about traveling was you needed a PCR test to show that you'd done a PCR test. Again, because it's an emergency and an act, there's no law. So my truth on that one, if they don't work, my question, why would I need a PCR test? You need to have one because of this, but why would I have one if they don't work? You can't get on the plane, but can you tell me if they don't work, why would I have one? We're just doing our job, but I've just shown you they don't work, so why would I have one? All of those outcomes, and people could say all sorts of things. My question shields that truth. The law, what law? It shields my truth. And then the last part of that, worst case scenario. looking at the full spectrum, what would that look like? And the worst case scenario, if I stayed within my rights, my law, which is cause no harm, cause no loss, which none of that would have happened. Disturbing the peace was the third, breach of peace. So that really means remain calm and you will in well within your rights. Usually when people get challenged and frustrated, they then go into a state of anger, frustration, and you've broken the law. So the last one was worst case scenario. If I stayed calm, I spoke my truth, I'd be put inside a cell for 24 hours and they would have to let me go. I was prepared to go into the cell for 24 hours. I even imagined meditating in the cell. And I realized at that point then, there's nothing that they could do after. They would have to let me go. There's no evidence. I give them no other reasons to keep me in or detained. And then when you know your rights, when it becomes illegal, it's a contract. So they tell you one thing, you need to pay $2,500, you need to do this. If it's a contract, you can set the rules too. So for every hour that I was in the cell, I was invoicing them £1,000 an hour. So coming back to the UK, I had all these scenarios in my head to the point where a 12-hour flight from Brazil, I meditated the entire time. And I was so set on getting back home. It was like I'd already done it. I then get back to the airport in the UK. Managed to get through France, get out of Brazil, all stood on my truth. One of the powerful teachings, just to add to this, is no does not mean no. People say no to tick a box if they're doing their job, but your truth, you can stand on it too. So if you stay persistent, and when there's a will, there's a way, you will find the way. So get back to the UK, and lo and behold, they didn't let me in. The immigration said you will have to go to the hotel quarantine. Everyone does. And because I knew my rights, they wouldn't let me in. I asked them to go and get the police. And in my head, I'd already gone through the role play of the whole police, how to work the police, what to say to the police, what law have I broken. Simple. I had a few more things to take with me, which I'll share. The police come and it was a bit of a standoff. I remained calm. My phone was out. To the point where they unlawfully arrested me. But they didn't really know what was going on, and there was no reason to arrest me. They didn't actually tell me why. I went through to the police station. I stayed in the cell 5 hours. They let me go. They had to let me go. It was an expensive day for them on that side, but they had no grounds to arrest me, no law. And I managed to get home, no problems after that. And my life changed, took on a new directory. My life changed, it took on a new trajectory. So coming back to that story, the reason why I shared with you that every part of the way I had it acted out in my head, in my meditation, I went through the conversations, the back and forths. And when I found my power questions, I could always bring it back to that. And I managed to get through inflow. Was there nerves? Yes. But I'd been there before. So quantum is going into these scenarios and you looking at every outcome. You look it through different perspectives. Start from their truth. You're not coming in. I've got a job to do. I've got to tick these boxes. I've got to be seen doing this. Everyone else goes in there. This is what I say. Start from their truth. Look at the higher perspective, the back and forth, the energy of the conversation. And then stay with your truth and stand on that all the way through. Using the same way, visualization. If you visualize the outcome from one perspective, If something comes out of the ordinary and you're not prepared, the body goes into fight or flight, a state of fear. And sometimes that shock can pull us out of presence. The difference in sports terms, difference to win a race. So coming on to sports, the quantum. Chris Hoy, Olympic racer, training for Olympic Games to win. He's a Romanian champion, to win the gold medal. And working with his psychiatrist, they role-played different outcomes and different scenarios. They took themselves there. And they used to use examples of everyone before you in the race, and he would always be the last one as champion, are going to get the world record. It's the Olympic Games, and you're now up. To win this race, you have to get the world record. The only way you're getting gold, which means the best time you've ever performed in your life. And they used to run through all different scenarios. What happens if you're this far behind? What would the crowd look like? What would be the noise? Go through all the different scenarios. And they used to reenact it out in his head and in the performance. And what occurred on the Olympic Games is 3 people before him all had got the world record. So he had to now pull it out of the bag. He said if he had not done all of this training and taken himself to these moments, the nerves would have kicked in. But he'd done it so many times before that he went on to that race and he cycled his best ever performance, won the race. Example of quantum. So quantum is quantifying all things, all outcomes, all perspectives, which gets you stretching your imagination. So if we now use that for conversations with loved ones, where there is resistance, there is barriers, there is ego jerk reactions, and it's a continuing cycle. It's a frustration. If you can take the time to sit and work out what is your truth, what is the ultimate outcome in this relationship, within this next conversation, and if you feel that within the meditation, work back from that as a truth, using your gauge, soul, and anything that's not the soul, negativity, energy, protection, using your questions to bring it back to the truth, being the conductor from the negative to the positive, from the answers coming back from them. Where is your truth? What do you return back with? Reenact all of it out in your head, but go through their perspective first. Really think and feel through their eyes, see it through their eyes. Be one with them, and you will find your answers every step of the way. So if we now take that whole concept, at any given moment in your life, you can go back, you can go forward, connect one light to another, one now to another. Look at each outcome, bring it back to the truth, and you'll start to see that you've been to places before they've even taken place. And in those heated moments, in those moments of uncomfort, of shock, of surprise, you already know how to deal with it. And what is the truth? Your feelings. So your feelings will always be the truth. The mind can get distracted, but you stay with that, grounded. And it allows that mind to be clear, calm, concise, confident. And I now use this for every outcomes. If I've got a situation, I will go and I close my eyes and I take myself different possibilities. I'm prepared for certain conversations at any given moment in my life, certain discussions. I know how to get out of them. I know what questions to ask. I then can stand on that, and whatever reactions come back, I work on the quantum. If they react that way, what can I say? How do I show up? How can I change the energy? If they said this, what can I say? How would I respond? So each outcome, I work with me first, my outcomes. I then see what their words and how I respond to their outcomes. I then take myself to their reaction from energy. What is my energy? So I can go forward, I can come back, each step of the way. And if you find those power questions, you've stopped that here. And coming back to the analogy of the castle is the mind. And every now and then you have to reinforce that castle. So that mind, let's use that as the quantum. The gatekeepers have now all been informed of all the different outcomes. And sometimes that castle gets intruded. It gets breached. And there's a bit of a shock factor. This is where the ego gets tested. Being out in Arizona, I've met a lot of friendly people. I'm always smiling. I always get a free coffee. I remember people's names. They remember me. That's how I show up each day. And I'm very good at protecting my energy. I'm very good at choosing the right environment. I trust my soul. However, I was met with a surprise. My quantum wasn't picking up this. I went to send a post back to the UK. And the lady that I met was so rude, spiteful, rude, just come out of nowhere. And it shocked me. I wasn't prepared. My reaction was caught off guard. And that energy on the car drive for the next 30 minutes stayed with me. How has she done that? Those thoughts continued in the evening. And I realized my castle had been breached. My quantum computer hadn't taken it to that place. There was no expectations there. That was complete ego that I stayed out of now. Yet that was my teaching. I now reinforce my castle. I re-instruct from the mind. How do I show up? If that was to happen again, what would be my reaction? How could I come back with love? So we use our experiences day to day. And then we reflect our light. We go back. We use our imagination. Connecting the dots is each now at a time. And if we go through the speed of light to the destination and trust that the dots will connect in between, have faith, then you listen to your soul. You stay on the right path with your feelings. So with your eyes closed still, bring awareness to something you can now work on with your quantum, your capabilities, your technology. It's the power of your mind, it's the advancement of your body, and it's the root from your soul. And I really encourage people to take things into their meditation. Take it in with your soul. If your soul has the answers, your mind can learn from the soul. And every step that you make now, you're always ahead of time. Steps ahead of the game. And being prepared for each moment keeps you present. So I'd love to know what comes up for you on here. When you think of the word time travel, change it to light travel. Change it inside, that is you, the quantum. You're quantifying all things. And all things is everything that takes place within your life. You go where you choose. And use the meditation to take you to those destinations. Challenge yourself to look through different perspectives. Because sometimes that will give you the soul slap. You're not in your truth because you realize you see it from a different pair of eyes. And then you get your new answer, your new approach, your new question. So enjoy, everyone. Thank you so much.